At noon, with the wind burning as if the plains were breathing through the mouth of an oven, he drew up his horse in front of the little schoolhouse, swung down without raising dust, and spoke like a man returning from a place he refused to name. "I need a mother for my children, and you need shelter." It was not a greeting, it was a blow of truth. Elena Vega pressed the slate to her chest, the other hand gripping her skirt so the wind wouldn't strip her bare in front of the town, and looked at the man the stories called the millionaire cowboy of Loma Seca. Severo Duarte had the hands of someone who had broken colts before he ever counted coins. A thick silence hung from his shadow. "My children already have a mother," she answered, dry. One eye on the doorway, where Luz, 12, and Nico, 8, peered out with chalk-stained fingers. "And the shelter I need fits inside adobe walls, thank you." "It doesn't fit when a banker wants your walls, your children, and your work," he said without raising his voice. "Lujan is moving the sheriff. He's already signed a paper against you." Elena swallowed dust. She saw the dark horse, the saddle with fine silver work, the revolver that seemed to weigh nothing on his hip. She saw the cracked leather of her own patched apron. "And why should I believe in the charity of a man like you?" "It's not charity, teacher. It's a bargain. You give me a name, I give you a roof. And in return, I do something only I can do." "What?" "I make sure Lujan doesn't lay a hand on your school or your children," he said, as if reciting an old promise. "And I make sure the past stops looking for me. If it comes looking, I don't want you bringing it into my classroom. Then marry me and leave it outside." He said it the way a man bets on a horse whose run he already knows. Inside, Luz tugged Nico by the elbow. "Ma," Luz whispered, "Doña Petra says the sheriff is here. He brought papers." Elena closed her eyes for a blink. When she opened them again, there was a steady flame in them. "Come in, Severo. If this is a bargain, we discuss it inside. If it's a threat, you leave now." "A bargain," he agreed. He stepped in, took off his hat, and the sun left a stripe of fire across his hair. Doña Petra, the cook whose hands woke up kneading, smacked the table with her spoon. "Sit down, Señor Millionaire. Here, food doesn't do the buying. Words do." Sheriff Pierce waited outside the schoolhouse, boots covered in other people's dust, the folded paper like a knife in his hand. He smiled under a trained mustache. At his side, banker Crispin Lujan, standing in the shade, chewed on a gold toothpick. "How long does it take a schoolmarm to read?" Lujan said. "The clock charges interest." "Take your interest and tuck it away," Pierce answered. That Duarte didn't come to draft lesson plans. Inside, Elena laid 3 rules on the wooden table, like chalk cutting across black. 1. My children and my students come first. 2. You don't touch the school's money. 3. You don't fire a shot inside this town. "I only put 1, Severo said, sitting as if the chair were a gentle horse. "Trust me enough not to ask why they're hunting me." "That's no use to me," Elena said. "Trust can't be ordered. It's earned." "I can earn it," Severo said. "But not with words, with a deed. I accept your 3, and I add this. If I lie, I leave." "And why marriage?" "Because the paper Pierce has says a woman without a husband and without land of her own is unfit to guard orphan children who aren't her blood," Severo said. "Written by Lujan, sealed by the judge who drinks his liquor. What do they gain by taking my students from me?" "A closed school frees up city land. Lujan rezones it with the sheriff and sells the corner to the railroad men," Severo said. "Rails don't ask about pencils." Elena felt the blow under her ribs. It scared her more than the revolver. She looked at Luz and Nico, pretending not to listen. She looked at Doña Petra, who nodded with a gravity that smelled of broth. "And your children?" she asked, pinning him with her gaze. "You said you needed a mother for them." "I took them out of the desert and out of myself," he answered. 2 little creatures, hunger dropped in my hands on a journey. Risco, my old cowhand, watches them. I could buy 10 wet nurses, teacher. A mother, I can't." Elena blew air through her nose like a mare gauging the courage of the rider. "I don't marry for pity or fear. Neither do I. Severo said. I marry for a war you don't win with bullets or signatures, with someone who doesn't give up. And that's what I am? That's what you show, he said. And for a moment, his eyes let her see a tunnel with rails and darkness that smelled of coal. What did your past call you? Elena asked, probing a hot wire. Trino, he said. Train whistle before the robbery. Not anymore. Go, she said quickly. Go and come back by sundown with the preacher from the little church, the witnesses, and clean papers. If you don't come back, I'll know it was smoke. I'll be back, he said. He put on his hat and, going out, crossed paths with Pierce. The sheriff smiled with nickel teeth. Duarte, he said. I sign warrants the way I sign letters to friends. Today I've got one with your alias on it. Today I'm no alias, Severo answered. Today I'm the school teacher's husband. We'll see if the judge believes in miracles, Lujan said, toothpick glinting. God makes water, I make debt. Debt drowns. I'll see you at the church, Severo said without raising his voice. You're invited. Bring your best lie. At sundown, when the hills lit up with that red that looks like a farewell. The little church of Loma Seca smelled of pine and candles. Risco, an old cowhand with a beard like a worn-out broom, held his hat in his hands as if he were cradling a nest. Tohono, his tracker friend who smelled of old dust and storms, stood in the back, desert eyes silent. Inez de la Serna, an elegant widow in a dark dress and a pearl necklace she did not touch with her fingers, took a side pew like someone watching an auction. Wherever you go, the shadow will catch up to you, Severo, Inez whispered as she passed. I know how to offer a canopy without papers. I need light, not shadow, he said, watching Elena come down the aisle in a plain dress that fit her like she'd invented it. Elena did not smile. Her eyelids trembled when Luz put an iron ring, hammered by Benito, the oldest student, who read as if the world lived inside a book, into her hand. The judge, who was also the priest, because in poor towns jobs stack up, cleared his throat. Do you, Elena Vega, consent to take Severo Duarte as your husband, in good, bad, droughts, and trains? I do, she said, and the word was not soft, it was a nail. Do you, Severo Duarte, consent to take Elena Vega as your? I do, he cut in, like a man nailing shoes to a horse in mid-jump. Pierce came in late, boots loud, and Lujan behind him, suit that looked down on everyone. They saw the rings, heard the amen, and knew the first paper was ash. Outside, the air was a knife. Pierce walked up with the calm the law gives when it's held by those who bend it. Congratulations, he said with a saloon smile. Tomorrow your lady will be summoned for outstanding accounts at the school. And you, Treno, for a railroad job they say you hit in Sonora. I don't go by that name anymore, Severo said, and tomorrow I won't answer in the street. My wife's paper will. The truth will, Elena said. I'll bring it. Truth's for sale, Lujan said. I buy it wholesale. I write it with children, Elena answered, and I keep it with people who don't owe you. Lujan barely inclined his head. Everybody owes, he smiled. Even the saints. They left the way plagues arrive, slowly, sure they'd be back. That night, in the room that held them, a couple of trunks, a cot, and the town's breathing, Elena watched Severo take off his revolver and lay it on the floor, far from anyone's reach. You say you won't fire a gun in town. I say there are no weapons in my house, she said. So be it, he nodded. If violence comes in, I'll throw it out with my hands. Why are you looking at me like that? Because I'm afraid and you don't make it any easier, she said. I don't trust men who hoard secrets like they hoard silver. Silver gets spent, secrets rot, he said. I'll give you one that doesn't kill, so you see I don't bite. When I had another name, I swore I'd never whistle again before a misfortune. Today I didn't whistle. Thank you, she murmured. Elena, he said, his voice nodded. I won't ask you for love. I'll ask for patience. Patience I have, she said. Just don't ask me to save you from the man you were. You climb out of him yourself. In the days that followed, the school kept up its noise of chalk, planks, and Doña Petra's soup, but the shadow of the bank and the sheriff slipped into every notebook. Inez, dragging the rumor of her old money, visited with sweets for the children and sentences that tasted the air. "A teacher married to a man with enemies doesn't sleep," she said one afternoon, while Elena passed out bread. "I could take your danger away with a single signature." "I don't want your generosity," Elena answered. "If I want him gone, I'll tell him myself." Inez looked at her with immaculate pity. "We don't need heroes in the age of trains, teacher. We need accountants." "We need adults," Elena said. "And you're playing games." Inez didn't answer. She took a letter from her purse and laid it on the table. "His name is Elias Fado. He doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive debts." Elena waited until Inez had gone. She tore the letter open, unread, and threw it into the stove. What burned smelled like old jungle. That afternoon, Tohono appeared with dust stuck to his cheekbones. He didn't knock. He leaned in the doorway, width of silence. Severo saw him and knew there were signs a man could read without words. "Who's coming?" he asked, stepping into the yard, eyes locked on the trackers. Tohono pointed his chin south. "Men, 3 first, 5 after. Horses with heart-shaped shoes. Elias Fado's brand." "They knew you'd give up whistling," Risco said, sharpening a knife on dry stone. "They prefer your blood." "I'd rather pay with my voice," Severo said. "If Fado's coming, he's coming for me, not for papers." Elena appeared in her flour-stained apron, elbows set. "If they come for you, they come for what's mine," she said, "and for what's theirs." She nodded toward Luz and Nico, playing with a spinning top. "What are you going to do, man?" "What no one else can do," Severo answered. "Open a door only the sin I committed can open." "I don't understand," Elena said. "Luhan and Fado teamed up over a book nobody knows how to read," he said. "A double-ink book. The white part is accounts. The black part is diverted tracks, cursed cargo, and names erased. I was the one who taught them how to write it. I know how to read it." "Where is it?" Tohono asked, voice of stone. "Hidden under Crispin's bank, inside the wood of the counter, treated with vinegar so eyes slip past it," Severo said. "I know because we did it together, back when there was no such thing as my wife or the word school." Elena looked at him the way you look at a knife that also slices bread. "Can you get it out?" "Yes." "Can you do it without killing?" "With help, I can." "Then ask." "Risco, I need those old hands of yours. When they come in looking for me, you'll sell them the idea of a trail toward the ravine. There is no such trail. You'll pen them up in the small corral. No shooting, and Doña Petra will give them water with salt." "Can I throw in some chili?" Doña Petra asked, appearing with her spoon raised. "If your soul demands it, yes," Severo said. "Tohono, you'll mark our horses' hooves with the heart-shaped shoe upside down. When they trail us, they'll doubt their own tracks. Tonight, you'll open the back of the bank for us with the patience of stones." "I am stone," Tohono said. "Elena," and he stopped, as if her name weighed something. "You'll hold the most dangerous part. Speak. Tomorrow you'll go with all the school mothers and the children and read out loud in front of the bank. The children of Loma Seca will fill the street with words until people have to listen. Meanwhile, I'll go in with Risco like a man paying off a loan. I'll walk out with the book tucked into my waistband. If they stop me, you keep reading and ask to see the judge. If Luhan sends Pierce, the mothers will sing the alphabet. The noise of children beats gunpowder 1 time out of 10. "And the other 9? Elena said. "You'll have me." "You say that as if it were a lot," she replied. "I say it because it's all I've got," he said, turning toward the setting sun as if measuring whether it would be enough. The next morning, Loma Seca woke to something it had never heard before, the murmur of reading. Nico read slowly, stumbling, and people stopped to help him along. Luz walked steady, voice clear, and the men heading for the cantina took off their hats to listen to how the world fit inside syllables. Elena tapped out the rhythm with her ruler, a music that needed no instruments. Across the way, Crispin Lupin's bank opened its doors with the smell of polished wood. Luhan came out with his gold toothpick and a shriveled grape smile. "What a nice choir," he said. "How much for the song?" "For the price of not selling yourself," Elena said. "We're here to remind you that land was donated for a school. Then it got undonated," Luhan replied. "Papers evolve. Like snakes, Doña Petra said with pot-lit eyes. They shed skin so they can strangle you just the same. Sheriff, Lujan said, keep the teacher in line. Pierce stepped up with 2 deputies. The street belongs to everyone, ma'am. Don't block commerce. Elena lifted the ruler. The street belongs to those who walk it without fear. Today, I'm not afraid. The children kept reading. Benito, the prodigy student with a memory like a bird trap, began chanting the articles of a 10-year-old town ordinance. The corner building shall remain in trust for school purposes, he read. That was then, Lujan said. The law's not fresh bread you eat in a day, Elena shot back. If you won't keep it, I'll hold it in my mouth until you remember. Inside the bank, Severo and Risco went in like men bringing hats to be cleaned. Risco spoke to the thin-mustached cashier, asking about a loan to repair wells. The cashier shuffled papers. Severo moved behind the counter as if looking for the place to sign, and his fingers traced the grain of the wood until they found a varnished line that didn't shine like the rest. He felt along it with his fingertip, found the hidden peg, and took a breath. Looking for something, Mr. Duarte? The cashier asked. Yes, Severo said, smiling. I'm looking to owe your boss nothing. Nobody manages that, the cashier said, chuckling at his own joke. Severo pressed the peg with his nail. Nothing opened. He pressed again at another corner. He heard the click he'd learned in a freight car, back when his name was nothing but a whistle. Slat loosened just enough for his quick fingers to fish out a small ledger bound in leather stained with vinegar. Invisible to hurried eyes, he slipped it into his waistband. Paperwork done, he said, scribbling any old signature. He walked out with Risco into the sunlight that stabbed at their eyelids. Elena read louder. Lujan applauded softly. What a beautiful performance, he said. Wrap it up, I've got lunch. You'll wrap up in a jail cell, Elena said, when this town remembers which side of the road it walks on. You're the one who needs to pick a side, teacher, Lujan said. And you've already picked wrong. Your husband steals from the same place he pretends to pay. My husband steals what you hide, Elena said, and she didn't look at Severo, who was no longer beside her. He had slipped toward the corner where Tohono waited, all shrub shadow. They ducked into the school's back room, a little side house that smelled of ink and maize. There, they opened the book. The white ink spoke of interest and due dates. The black ink, brought out by a moist breath and a little of Doña Petra's vinegar, showed train routes with switched cargoes, figures that didn't add up, and names with nicknames that tasted of gunpowder. 3 times, the name Faro, and a small drawing, a heart pierced by a horseshoe. It'll do, Severo said. This alone won't topple Lujan, but it'll tie him down. We knock him over with what's missing. What's missing? Elena asked. My confession, he said. Elena swallowed hard. You think that saves anything? It won't save me, he said. It'll save your school's deed, the town's face, and my children when they find out who I was. Risco snorted. I don't like it, boss. Jail isn't for men who fix wells. It's for neck breakers. I broke things, Severo said. Somebody has to pay. Let them pay, Doña Petra burst out. You go to jail, and who am I supposed to argue with over the price of corn? Elena set her hand on the book, as if blessing or binding it. If you're going to confess, you do it when the whole town is watching, she said. Not in that judge's office, where his hand's always licking Lujan's. It'll be in the plaza, Severo said, and it'll be today, before Faro gets here. By mid-afternoon, when the dust turned into a wall, and the sun nailed shadows like knives, Elias Faro rode into Loma Seca with 5 men and bone-white smiles. He had the pretty face of someone who believes he deserves everything, and a small, round scar, like a misshapen coin, at the corner of his mouth. He swung down from his horse with ballroom grace. I'm looking for a ghost who learned to wear a fancy hat, he said. Treno, if I didn't kill you then, I've come to collect interest. Severo waited for him in the plaza, hatless, sleeves rolled, hands empty. Elena stood at his side, Luz and Nico behind them, and half the town circled them, humming between fear and curiosity. Luhan watched from the bank balcony, gold toothpick in his mouth and whiskey in his glass. Pierce, hand resting on his pistol, stared with quiet hunger. "Here I am," Severo said. "No whistle." Pharaoh's face lit with something that wasn't joy. "I figured you'd still be running toward a train," he said. "You did great things, Traino. Shame you fell in love with a short word." "Which one?" "Law," Pharaoh said and spat. "I fell in love with an even shorter word," Severo said. "Home." "That doesn't exist," Pharaoh said. "You buy it by the yard." "They don't sell it in your store," Severo replied. "Enough poetry," Luhan called down from above. "Sheriff, lock up the poets." Pierce started forward and stopped when he heard the children. Benito, of course, had taken the book, lifted it high, and started reading loud, his throat ringing like a bell. "Cargo diverted on March 14th, Car 3, property of the company, transferred to the name of CL." "Stop!" Luhan shouted, and his toothpick dropped, ringing like a coin on the boards. "Payment to E. Pharaoh for escort services, 20 ounces paid in kind and—" "It says in kind, sir. What does that mean?" Benito went on, a boy who knew exactly where to hit without knowing it. "Enough," Pierce roared. "Let them read," Severo said quietly. "Today the law speaks with my mouth." He turned to Elena and the town. "They called me Traino because I whistled before a robbery, so my men would know when to jump. I never killed anyone who hadn't raised a weapon, but I broke locks, diverted trains, kept secrets. We wrote this book together, Luhan and Pharaoh and I. I can prove it. I brought it so the judge can see it, and so I can tell you that what you owe isn't money, it's shame." Pharaoh bared his teeth in a laugh. "Confess, sure, that way you save yourself my bullet." "You won't save me anything," Severo said, "because I'm not going to shoot you." "Then die," Pharaoh said, reaching for his gun. He never managed to clear leather. Luz, with a shout that burst out like thunder she'd been keeping in her chest, ran forward and hurled her spinning top at his wrist. The hit was sharp and clean. The gun jerked skyward. In that instant, Tahano, already waiting in the trough's shadow, moved like breaking earth and slammed into Pharaoh in a shove that didn't sound like a fight, it sounded like rock. Pharaoh's men drew their weapons, only to find buckets of salty water raining down from the rooftops, as Doña Petra and the mothers pitched with kitchen-true aim. Salt burned their eyes, metal got wet, fear did the rest. Pierce looked at Luhan. Luhan looked at the book in a child's hands. Something in their ankles turned to iron filings. Elena stood firm and raised her voice. "Sheriff, arrest the men with guns, or take off that star. Today, you're either law or trash." Pierce took a breath. He looked at Pharaoh, at the town, at the banker. He lowered his hand from his pistol and raised the other. "Men, drop your weapons," he said. "If you shoot, I shoot first." Pharaoh's men hesitated. 2 obeyed. 2 others kept their guns wavering. The 5th aimed at Severo. Severo didn't move. "Shoot," he said. "I'll give you my chest if I have nothing else to give you." No one fired. The wind stopped it, or shame did, or the realization that children were watching. Pharaoh, wrist bruising, drew back as if he'd just tasted sour whiskey. "You hide behind a schoolhouse stage, Treno," he spat. "I'll be back when your choir's gone." "Don't go far," Severo said. "I'm not finished." He walked to the center, climbed the dry fountain, and spoke in that tone you learn when you want everyone to hear without yelling. "I am guilty of robbing trains. Today I give back what was mine from those crimes. I renounce all my land that never sees water, and every contract that doesn't smell like bread. And I surrender to justice on one condition, that the judge guarantee the school stays where it is, and that this book is copied 3 times, 1 for the church, 1 for the sheriff's office, and 1 for the cantina wall." "You don't negotiate from a fountain," Luhan said, cheeks flushing red. "The man who pays is the man who bargains." "I'm paying," Severo said, "with my name and my freedom." Elena looked at him like he might shatter or grow taller. She didn't say, "Don't do it." She said, "If you go in, you come out." "If I go in, I'll come out," he repeated. "Judge," Elena called, to the pale figure hovering at the church steps. Will you take a man who surrenders and a town asking you to honor what's written? The judge swallowed. Weighed Luhan, weighed the town, weighed the children. I will, he said, surprised by his own voice. If the sheriff backs it. I back it, Pierce said, looking at Luhan with a clear "not today" in his eyes. Luhan bit his toothpick until it snapped. This isn't over, he said, coming down, walking up with a fine, sharp hatred. You can't eat a book. No, but it feeds memory, Elena answered. I'll see that hunger finds you, he muttered. Step back, Tohono said, suddenly behind him like he'd sprouted out of the shadow. Or I swallow you whole. For the first time, Luhan retreated without his mask. That night, as the long shadows came out, Severo walked toward the cell with clean hands. He left his hat on Elena's table and spoke softly to her. I don't know if I saved you or sunk you. You didn't come to save me, she answered. You came to choose, and you chose right. This takes everything from us, he said. It takes what we don't need, she said. Keep what you do, here. She tapped his breastbone firmly with 2 fingers. Someone I never met lives there. I won't ask you to wait for me, he said, glancing at Luz and Nico, pretending to sleep. I'll ask them to learn to read better than I ever did. You already read, Luz said without opening her eyes. You just switched books. The lockup lasted 8 months and 3 days. During that time, the school stayed alive like a stove. The book, copied out in Benito's careful hand, hung in the cantina and in the church. Some men spat on it as they passed. Others touched it with 2 fingers like a talisman. Pierce, squeezed by territorial pressure and rumor, let the judge do his job. Risco fixed wells with hands that smelled of old leather. Doña Petra cooked for too many mouths. Tohono disappeared for 2 weeks and came back with news that felt like tracks. Pharaoh was recruiting men in the south. Luhan was buying and selling. Inez was playing both sides with ice in her veins. Elena taught reading as if every word turned into a paper bullet. When they finally opened the gate, Severo stepped out thinner, a new strand of silver in his hair. He had no revolver. He had an idea. Sell what was left of his herd to buy the strip of land next to the school and plant poplars instead of fences. Poplars? Risco scoffed. Some men fence with wire. You fence with shade. Shade teaches, Severo said, and cools hot heads. Elena handed him a notebook. Learn to write the way you teach writing, she said, with patience, without pushing yourself to sprint. He learned his letters like a man learning to use a hand that had fallen asleep. His fingers, less deft with ink than iron at first, found a new way to grip. Nico, jealous, taught him to draw little stickmen in the margins. Luz, serious, corrected him without mercy. Home isn't a silent word in your mouth, she told him one day. You say it with deeds. The silent letter still weighs something, he smiled, but it's there. The calm lasted as long as calm lasts on any frontier, just long enough for danger to sniff out where confidence grows. Late in autumn, under a glass blue sky, Pharaoh came back with 8 men, a carriage, and a woman, Inez. She wore no mourning, just a very pale dress that made her skin even paler. She climbed down from the carriage like someone coming to bless land that wasn't hers. I've come to buy peace, she said, raising a document. Here's an offer. Luhan sold me his papers before he went to Santa Fe. If we sign, the school moves 2 blocks. You gain a new building with bigger windows. I gain the corner. Nobody loses. Someone loses, Elena said. The soul, when it gets used to moving for money. The soul doesn't pay rent, Inez replied. The body does. We're not signing, Severo said softly. I wasn't talking to you, Inez said, her politeness cutting. I was talking to the teacher. Elena stepped 3 paces closer. Why do you hate me? She asked bluntly. Because you had something I couldn't buy when I still had the chance, Inez answered. A man who decides to leave his favorite sin behind for you. Pharaoh laughed, bored. Enough novels, he said. Treno, you handed yourself over to justice. Now you hand yourself over to me. There are no singing children today. Today there are men with dry powder. Severo looked at Tejano. Tejano made a small gesture, barely a lifted brow. He had put his own people in the dry arroyo and stretched several invisible ropes along the slope. Any man who tried to come at them on horseback would hit the lines and fall. I don't want another plaza scene, Severo said. I'm offering something different, Pharaoh. A race to the river gorge. No guns. If you get there first, you sign with Ines, you move the school, we'll take the corner, and you never come back. If I get there first, you leave Loma Seca today. Leave me and the teacher alone. Ines smiled, surprised the game had rules. She started to speak, then thought better of it. Pharaoh licked his scar. I accept, he said. You without whistling, me without shooting. We run. We run, Severo agreed. Elena grabbed Luz's arm. No, she whispered. He has to, Tejano said, almost voiceless. He's running for something we can't run for him. Risco moved to stand beside Elena. If he falls, I'll pick him up, he promised, though his eyes trembled. They ran. The river gorge was a knife wound between two low hills, smooth rock with water below. The horses leapt forward as if they understood that today wasn't about speed so much as pride. Pharaoh's men tried to follow, but the ropes did their work. Two went down, one rolled all the way into the arroyo and scraped half his face. The others cursed in barroom language. Pharaoh and Severo were left alone in front. Severo didn't whistle. Man and horse moved as one body. Pharaoh, jaw clenched, tried to cut across on a shortcut he knew. Severo led him, measured him, then drew level, hugging the gorge wall like a shadow. They reached the edge almost together. Pharaoh dug in his spurs. His horse slipped for half a second. Severo saw him fall the way he'd seen men fall toward the river in his own memory, like tokens. He didn't think. He threw himself from the saddle, grabbed Pharaoh by the vest at the very brink, both of them hanging from a dry root. Let me go, Pharaoh spat. You don't owe me a life. I owe myself, Severo said, and I owe you justice. You're not dying like this. You're a fool, Pharaoh said. If you haul me up, I'll kill you. Climb, Severo said. He hauled him with teeth and back and a knee driven into rock that split open like fruit. When he got Pharaoh safely up, the man became pure temptation to pull a knife. He didn't. He pulled out a laugh that sounded hollow. I can't kill you now, he panted. You belong to me a different way. The way I hate you is what keeps me alive. I'll watch you fall without pushing. He left with his men, having signed nothing. Ines stayed. She looked at Elena, looked at Severo with bloodied knee and broken smile. Nobody wins, she said. I have the papers, you have the town. Today it's a tie. Today we learn, Elena answered. You too, widow. Ines put the papers away with a very measured gesture. I learned places that matter don't move, she said. Maybe I'll get tired of moving. Maybe I won't. She rode off in her pale carriage down the dusty street. The town watched her go the way you watch lightning that never lands. That night, Elena washed Severo's wound with hands that only shook when he wasn't looking. I could have lost you twice, she said without meeting his eyes. When you confessed, and today. I'm not a coin, he smiled, teeth gritted against the sting of alcohol. You don't lose me, you spend me. I don't like that, she said. I'd rather plant you. Then plant, he said. I'll be the soil. By winter, the land next to the school had grown into a stand of poplars with ribbons tied to the low branches by Luz and Nico. Benito painted a sentence on the back wall in whitewash, one everyone learned by heart. Law that isn't read turns to dust. Pierce, with less hunger in his eyes, handed over his star and went off to watch a mill upriver. A new sheriff arrived from the territory, smelling of soap and asking more questions than he gave orders. Far away, Lujan tried to twist the case. The judge, with the town watching, would not bend. It took time, like snow takes its time coming to the mountains. But the order came at last. The corner property stayed with the school, by public deed and public reading, which now counted for more. Pharaoh never returned to the plaza. They say he went back to the river gorge one night to whistle alone, testing whether the wind would answer. It didn't. One spring afternoon, when the green was still thinking itself into existence, Ines appeared again in a less rich dress and with emptier hands. She sought out Elena, not Severo. "I got tired of moving," she said. "Bare neck, no pearls. I brought you an offering, my papers. They're no good anymore, but they're heavy on me. I want you to take them so I don't have to carry them." "In exchange for what?" Elena asked. "For a chair in your school," Ines said. "I can read numbers. I can teach the girls not to sell themselves cheap." Elena watched her a long time, measuring whether Ines's shade would smother or cool. "The girls don't sell themselves anymore," she said, "but they can learn to buy better. Sit down." Ines sat. And when Nico let out a whoop at one of Risco's jokes, she laughed too, differently, like someone who'd never been given permission before. Years later, when Luce talked about heading north to study how men made the world out of rails and laws without forgetting the land, Elena told her without theatrics, "Go and come back if you want. The school will have bigger windows when you return." Nico learned to doctor horses and break stubborn burros. One afternoon, Risco said goodbye the old man's way. He put on his best spurs, left his knife on Doña Petra's table, and walked straight toward the horizon until he turned into a line. Tohono vanished in the rainy season without a word. Someone said that's what stones do when they've finished their work. Severo and Elena, who had begun with a bargain that smelled of smoke, found themselves one day walking in silence under the poplars. He stopped. "I never asked you for love," he said, "but something's lodged in here." He tapped his chest. "I don't know if that's what it's called." "Don't name it," she said, straightening his collar. "Let it live." He, who had once been Treno, looked up. The railroad finally reached them, whistled in the distance, and for the first time in years, he wanted to whistle back. He didn't. He smiled. The wheels rolled past. In Loma Seca, the school didn't move. The poplars cast their shade. The book stayed in the cantina and the church, smudged with fingerprints. Elena taught the sons of men who used to prefer whiskey over ink how to read. Inez opened a small table where the girls did sums until traveling salesmen ran out of tricks. Severo learned to sign his name, not with just an S, but every stroke complete. And when a stranger asked whether the millionaire cowboy had turned into a saint, Doña Petra, ladling soup with a face that said no to the very idea, answered, "He turned into a husband. The rest works itself out." Only one thing remained to close the story for good, because half-open endings never let Elena rest. One afternoon she went to the river gorge with Severo and with Luce and Nico. They carried a rope, a jar of salt, and a shovel. They found the route where he'd once hung his life and Pharaoh's. There, without a word, they drove in a stake and tied a rag to it. "What is it?" Nico asked. "A marker," Elena said. "So no one runs here thinking the fall doesn't hurt, to remember that pacts matter more than pistols." "And the salt?" "To keep the wound from rotting," she said, throwing a handful onto the rock. "It's already closed, but you never know." Severo looked at her with that look of a man who understands late but well. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome," she said. "Are we all right?" he asked. "We're as all right as people can be," she answered, "which is a lot." The wind fluttered the little rag. The river below sounded like old bronze. The far-off train blew twice. And if someone walked through the plaza that day and asked after Lujan, they were told he'd taken his own train, in chains. To Santa Fe first, and then who knew where, that the judge signed where he was supposed to, and the new sheriff made less noise than his badge. And if they asked about the man who'd once said, "I need a mother for my children," Luce, with a woman's voice now, said, "He learned you don't ask for a mother. You ask for a home, and you work." And if they asked after the poor schoolteacher, Inez, bare-necked, said, with a twist of her mouth that looked like a real smile, she learned not to give away her corner. And in the end, everybody learned there was no miracle and no glorious shootout. just a string of stubborn acts in the mud, a confession in the square, the fool's race at the edge of emptiness, and a book copied out in a child's hand. That, which seemed small, held a town up. And yes, they married before they loved each other, but they stayed once they no longer had to. Not for money, not out of habit. For that heap of little things the frontier doesn't know how to count, and that if you try to write them down, the ink runs out. That's why maybe it was a good idea to plant poplars. The shade says what you don't know how to say. On the schoolhouse door, an old tin plaque remembered it all, with the clumsy nobility of something that was never meant to be a poem. Here, the school did not move. And that was the ending, closed like one hand folding over another. Not happy, not sad, but fair. Because it was chosen by people who had learned to read their own story and sign it in their own way.